Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnana Pradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya Tattvabodho Bhidiyate. So we are on just basic values of the book, which are setting the foundation for the knowledge that is to take place. And without these values, these foundational ideas, then, this knowledge it just doesn't have any context in the world. It just doesn't stick. Actually something very interesting happened, because not interesting, but it happens all the time, because I get emails from people and they ask me different viewpoints, right? Some lady asked me about vasana. Vasana is a term, likes and dislikes. And there's often a debate that happens in this world. Some swamis will say, you need to get rid of all of your vasanas. This is a common thing in this tradition. Some swamis will say that you need to get rid of all of your vasanas. Vasana just means your impressions, right? Your likes and dislikes, habits, what we fancy, what we don't fancy, our attractions, our aversions. So these are all vasanas. We went through this. This is, raga. We discussed raga and dvesha. Aversions, that means what we are pulled toward, what we are repulsed by, what we are sort of want to distance from ourselves, and what we want to bring closer to us. This is raga and dvesha. And some fellas think that, you need to get rid of all of your vasanas. So now in Vedanta, we don't say that. It doesn't say that anywhere, because that is impossible. That is literally impossible, because one is going to spend their whole life just getting rid of stuff, and then, open up a can, and then more things are found inside. And this can be a long, tiring process. So it can turn into like a pursuit of clearing one's vasanas, clearing one's sort of psychological pressures, which is fine. This is what we're doing. The point, though, is not to turn this into an end. It is not to turn it into something that is the ultimate thing. And it's all about physiological, psychological release of those pressures. They're there. I mean, it's not one person who doesn't have these pressures. And everyone's got different ways of dealing with them, right? The challenges that come in life. So now, now suppose, right, that someone doesn't have this shama and dhamma. Like shama is this cognitive flexibility. I'll talk a little bit more about it, but it's cognitive flexibility, having the capacity to reflect rather than impulsively react, rather to think, rather than to agree or disagree, just to use one's intellect and to think about it instead of just say, no, it's not like that, or yeah, I agree. A teacher doesn't want you to agree or disagree. A teacher wants you to think, right? What is the depth of this teaching for me? That's the personal question. So now I said to her, vasanas are infinite. 1 minus infinity equals to infinity. And this is a different point of view, of course. Now I know that there is a clearing. You have to do some mind management. That's what we're talking about here. However, she didn't like this. This strong, I tell you, it's just an immense dislike for what I said. And she said, replied very quickly, said, I disagree. You should listen to the Swami at this ashram. So here we have a sincere seeker who's telling a teacher to go and listen to another teacher, and yet they're asking for some advice. So look at this now. So I provided some feedback, right? Some advice. Right? There is a aspect of working on the vasanas, but also they will never be eliminated. The whole point is just to recognize I am not this vasana, right? I'm free from these vasanas. That's the ultimate purpose of Advaita. But this fella was not buying it. So she had this impulsive reaction. So what happened here? Last week we talked about shama, having a cognitive flexibility, questioning one's assumptions, right? Thinking about what does this mean for me? And if that fails, Then what happens? Then there's this emotional, impulsive need to react, right? To say something too soon without considering what happened. So this, I thought, was quite a relevant example of responding so quickly and discounting, right? Discounting the person, discounting the advice, discounting the point of view, discounting everything, because what happened? Shama was not working. And even Dhamma, right, holding back, we discussed last week, holding back, even that failed. So what happened? This person replied quickly, rather rudely. And what happened? It's a loss on their side. So they discounted a teacher who can help them. They discounted someone that can provide them a point of view, a different point of view. So this is, I thought, real life context of what happens when we don't have this this mental flexibility. And now, just give you an example, right? Just to apply some more context onto this. So there is a book called Think Again by Adam Grant, Think Again. And it is really just nothing but shama, really having the capacity to question one's assumptions because of our blind spots. So see, we all have blind spots. And they mentioned an example. There was a test done, those who believe they have a high amount of EQ, emotional intelligence, that means they have the capacity to be patient, to listen, to consider, to be considerate, to show empathy. Those who thought they have a high amount of emotional intelligence, when they actually had to do a test, like a written test, different scenarios, then they actually ended up being one of the lowest to score on that test, even though they displayed initially that they have a high confidence in their social etiquette, in their social capacities. So this is now, this is bias, the bias that the person can fall into, and they cannot see their own blind spots. So this is a lack of not using one's cognitive flexibility, cognitive capacity to question, could I be missing something out here? Is there a different way? And what is the implied meaning behind this message? Not the direct meaning, but also the implied meaning. So this all requires time for us to think, to consider. Otherwise, it slips. And if it slips, we deny ourselves a chance to go deeper into a teaching, to go deeper into a meaning of a statement. Okay. Now, this book gives an example. So when we debate, this book made a good point. We go into 3 modes. So what is a debate? It is where I say something and you say something else, and we are kind of like opposites. We have different opposing views. And what happens is, this is a model. It's quite a reliable model. It was designed by an economist, so they study the economy. So they have the good skills in observing the behaviors. But they said when we debate, we either turn into a politician, a preacher, prosecutor. What is a prosecutor? A prosecutor is the one, when they hear something, they will immediately discount you. So they have to be right no matter what, right? It's like, nope, this is not, you're wrong, and this is how it is. And they just leave it at there. No explanation, just kind of a short one-liner, kind of like what, this email, kind of what I got there. That's kind of a mode of prosecutor, the one who just wants to be right, and they're not interested in accepting external views, right? Because they're identified with their notion. The other is a preacher. The preacher is kind of like a prosecutor, but they have this long-winded explanation to explain to you why it is the way that it is, why it is the way that I think it is. So a preacher is interested in protecting and popularizing their existing system, right? So they're not really interested in the facts. They're interested in popularizing why what they have is reliable, and why it works, and why it's better than anything else, and why it's well thought of, and why it's not prone to failure, and why it's reliable. So the preacher, we have the prosecutor, and then we have the politician. The politician is the one who is not interested in arguing. And for them, the objective facts, it's not that important. They don't see the the point of objective facts. They don't really care about the objective facts. What they want is peace. They want to be approved. They want their idea. They want people to like their idea, and we are all having this nice community, and we're all getting along, and we want to have peace about my idea. Right? If someone wants to argue, I will just dismiss you. You're fake news, right? It's end of story like that. So a politician is looking for approval. That's how they are. They want approval and they want to promote peace. So they have no sense of arguing. It's not about arguing. It's just about, hey, let's be friends here. If you don't want to buy my notion, then I'm just going to move on peacefully, and I'm going to find some other group who's going to quietly accept what I have, what I share, and that's how it is, right? So now this is very interesting. So when there's a debate, right, these three is how we're generally trained to fall into: the prosecutor, the politician, and the preacher. And then this book says, but what if there is another way? And that's why the book is called Think Again, right? So rethink your strategy. So they say there's actually a fourth category, and that is the attitude of a scientist. Now, if you look at a scientist is the one who is curious. They're open to destroying their old views. They have no problem admitting their views has some room for improvement. They're open to experimentation. They're prone to testing hypotheses. They're open to, just asking questions. They're more about asking questions and engaging in a conversation rather than the preacher, the prosecutor, and the politician, who are not interested in really asking questions and engaging, but more so in spreading that set, firm, fixed notion. Okay. And I thought this is brilliant. This is a brilliant way to look at what Shama is really about. It's cognitive flexibility. Instead of looking at an old way, one needs to re-educate themselves, open up their mind to what more is possible. Now, to open one's mind, what do we need? We need a model. So this is why these are models. And when we find a model that makes sense for us, we can still gladly reject it. We can modify the model because nothing is prone to what? Nothing is fixed here. Therefore, everything is prone to like a scientist. So this is a great way of what Shama really is, right? Questioning one's assumptions, right? Being open. Hey, I may have blind spots. I may be thinking like this, but it's actually not the case. Finding a different perspective to things. The mind can kind of go into this kind of pessimistic view. Look at everything with pessimism. Finding the what if scenarios that don't work out. Like, what if this doesn't work, and what if that? And so it's really a creative agent for creating these pessimistic views. So now, what if one could rethink that and say, well, what about optimism? What about having a little bit of optimism? What about recognizing that there is an intelligence here? There is an order that has been here before this person was born. It's right here, right now, and the order is going to continue after every one of us are in our graves. So this order is there working all the time. This order doesn't fail. This order provides the results to everyone according to what they need, according to what they actually deserve, based on past causes, past things that we did, right? So this order doesn't fail. It's working all the time. And what if one could even accept this, this nityam? Wait a minute. All of this pessimism is based on what? Focusing on anityam, focusing on what is impermanent, focusing on what doesn't last, focusing on what is not working. What if I could focus on what is working? What if I could focus on the fact that there is an eternal reality here? What if I could focus on that this reality is always true? It will never die. It is full. It's complete. It is whole. Of course, we will discover that how. So this is what Shama is about. It is about expanding one's view, using one's intellect to open up one's mind to different scenarios, to different ways of kind of cognizing the world, right? Going from one mode to the other, because it is all in what? It is in your free will. And this is the glory of a human being. We have a free will. Free will means I have the choice to choose. And the choice, the choose that I choose, that you choose, that we choose every day is what develops our what? Our so-called vasanas, our habitual ways of perceiving the world. So what does this mean? It means that initially, yes, it is difficult to see this world, suppose, in an optimistic way. Suppose that is your new goal, an optimistic way, at least a little bit more optimistic. So what does this mean? If the mind has thought of in a different, opposite way for some years, then it's absolutely possible to start to look at the world in a slightly more brighter, uplifting, optimistic way. And so we can incorporate this in our days here and there. We can try through effort, we can attempt through effort to look at the bright side of things, and slowly, but gradually, like learning a language, very slow, like learning a language, before you know it, your reality starts to show some changes, some cognitive improvements, some cognitive flexibility. And, anyone who's learning a language will know, the beauty is actually you get a lot of confidence. Initially, we look at this language and we don't know anything. And then you go through your first words, right? And then, tomorrow you realize, oh, I remember yesterday's words. So, and then you get some confidence there. So, and then, it takes maybe 3 months. You look back and you realize, my God, I have improved so much. I can now put 3 words together. I can ask for a tea. I can ask for coffee. I can ask for a salad and cheese, right? I can do these basic things that were very intimidating sometimes. And how did this come? It came through, right? Reserving, reserving some minutes, right, of your time, of your busy time, deliberately. This is what we said, what Dhamma is also. And Shama, deliberate over mechanical. So deliberately, I will reserve maybe just 5 minutes and you will see that improvement. Yeah. I'm learning German. I started learning German just 2 months ago. I love languages, right? It's one of my favorite things. Like, Andre, what do you do during your spare time? I just learn a new language. It's just so interesting. I love languages. And it's really, empowering to see how quickly the mind can master a new language from absolute scratch. So this is the idea, right? You take on something and then you gain some confidence. You actually see, hey, if I'm learning this so quickly, then definitely this knowledge is also, definitely working in the background. You may not feel like it, but it's working in the background. Yeah. Vig?
Hi, Andre. I'm sorry I can't get my video working. It's off the blinkers now, but coming back to summer, and you're saying there's, the potential to question our assumptions, to immerse in cognitive flexibility. So
Yeah.
this is all really good, but I'm also, trying to reconcile this with what you said last week about subjectivity and filling in blanks, right? So,
Right.
there could be a potential with flexible cognitive flexibility to possibly slip down that slope where, we might be making assumption that is not real and, could get caught up with that, in the spirit of being flexible and questioning our assumption. How do we kind of mitigate that?
That is a wonderful and clear, well put and well thought out question, Vig. There's ways. I would actually like to hear other people, but I'll share. One of the ways is feedback. There's always a feedback loop. Every action that we put into the field towards anyone, it's mostly about people. It's not really about things. With things, they don't talk. Inert objects don't talk. So it's mostly about people. They will give you some feedback. Now, suppose someone gives you feedback. Now, the question is, well, what if actually I overreacted? What happens if, what if it was my sort of fault? I was maybe, too non-gentle. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I should have looked a little into where are they in this stage of life? Like, what are they saying behind these words? What's these words? See, these words are always indicators of something deeper. Have I taken time to look at what is deeper? So I'll give you an example. Suppose now this lady, right, who replied to me in a rather kind of an unprofessional way, I thought. Suppose that maybe I responded to her in a more kind of a too harsh, too direct way, right? Now, do you think that I've not thought about this already? I have thought about this already. Of course. In fact, that was the first thought. Have I done something that is too insensitive, that hasn't accounted to where she's really at? Maybe I went too far into the knowledge and said, no, Advaita is about, recognizing that you're not none of these vasanas. Maybe I should have said, hey, okay, so she's asking a question about these vasanas. So this indicates her whole stage, her whole view is about that alone. So maybe I should have gone along with that and gently guided her step by step, little by little. So of course I thought about that. So this means that not only is it a learning on my part, but it is also, also a learning, because I also responded back, that I said that it's a point of view, and it's not about black or white. I did respond. I said it's not about black or white, like you should get rid of these responses or you shouldn't, but rather at looking at it from different angles. Right. So I did respond. And now I look at that response, that my last response, and I say, I have no regrets about that response because I thought about it very, very well. But the first response, there's 10% of doubt. Maybe it was my fault. You see? So what happened? Because of that thinking, which is shama, this is all shama now. Because of that thinking, what's going to happen now next time? Right? When someone sends a similar message, I will think about it at least 10% more, at least a few moments more before responding. So again, how do we know whether our subjectivity is coming into the mix or not? Because look at it this way, nobody is free of this. Nobody. Every single person will fall for this sooner or later. Every teacher I've been with, Vedanta teachers, they have also gone through this sort of subjectivity. And I thought, my God, this person doesn't like me. They were too harsh on me. They're speaking so gently towards other students. And when they speak towards me, I feel like they're just not accounting my feelings here. So, and then of course they communicated with me. Maybe they were too harsh. So I tell you, even teachers fall for this. Like, there's no one is free from this. So this is the beauty of Shama. Shama is not just for the student. It's for we're all students here. So Shama involves constant reflection upon our actions, upon our behaviors, especially when someone gets upset over something that we said, because it's so easy to discount it and say it's their stuff, it's their projection. This is the most common thing. It's their projection. They have unresolved issues. Okay, that may be the case, but at the same time, I cannot discount their response as absolutely useless because every person has wisdom. Every response comes from some percentage of wisdom. So therefore, it's safe to say that 50% could be wisdom, 50% could be sort of a projection. But my focus is not on the projection because we're all projecting anyway. The focus is on the wisdom part. What is their response teaching me? Okay, so this is how, to ensure that this subjectivity doesn't get the better of us, and then we don't sort of continue this subjectivity. How so? Summary: by using every experience as a learning opportunity. What could have I done better? Was this the best approach? Was this the most loving way or loving manner to go about this? And what will I do next time? And go into a little bit of a scenario in your mind. Next time something happens, how will I respond differently? Yeah, this is my way. I don't know your way, but this is my way. If someone wants to share their way of, how do you recognize if it's subjectivity, and do you have a method of kind of correcting if you're not quite sure whether it was your stuff or their stuff? How do you deal with this? I would like to hear. Is it their stuff? Is it your stuff? And you're not quite sure. So what is your thought process of going about this, Lorena?
just wanted to add, sometimes it's body language as well. So it's not actually the words that you're saying. It could be, people could be threatened by your physical behavior as well. Or they could misinterpret your physical behavior, like the way you approach might not even be the words you're saying.
Wow. Yeah. Physical. Okay, Leo?
I think maybe reflection, and this is not going to be useful for most things in life, but if it's an issue that's really important to you and you want to know whether you're projecting or you're being objective, just reflect on it every day. Just think about it until it becomes clear. And if it never becomes clear, then maybe you need to ask someone, like a teacher or. And so yeah, this is not for everything, but if it's something that's really important, then yes. But then again, most things in life are not that important. So if you make a mistake, you can always apologize to.
Sure, of course. Yeah, and I want to extend what Leo said. Prayers. One thing that my teacher Nima has taught us very well and solidified this is prayers. When we have no one to turn to, then we all naturally we say there's a natural disaster, and then what do we say? Oh my God, it's instinctive. We just turn to a higher intelligence, and prayer can be a very effective way to talk, just to talk to your God, right? Whoever your understanding of God is, it doesn't matter. We're not philosophizing what is God or not right now, but just have a prayer. Lord, may I have the clarity so that so that I give the best of myself, so that it's mutually beneficial for both of us, and that it is healthy on both sides of us. So, may this mind receive your blessings, and may this mind be open to your grace, and may it be available to as an instrument through which you can speak through and offer your guidance through this instrument. May I not intercept with these with my own subjectivity. May this instrument merely respond in the best manner possible. For example, just a prayer you can make up spontaneously. And this is something, again, that I do. I do a lot of prayer. It's like a personal relationship. And it's very comforting to have that personal relationship because, see, to pray, it's not only making a person aware that they are subject to blind spots, but also it's letting you know what is important for you. Because if you verbalize it out loud, then you're telling yourself, what is it that's really, what do you value in life? What is it that you would like to sort of resolve or adjust in a sense, in a way that will create less resistance in life, right? So prayers is another method. Okay, anything else that we want to say?
Yeah, I want to share. I think building on what you shared earlier, Andre, about mental flexibility, I think that leaning in with curiosity is very, very helpful when you have differences in opinions with someone, and just being able to ask questions like, tell me more. What were you thinking, and how, explain to me about your thought process. And I think if we lean in with curiosity, and if we're curious, instead of being rigid, thinking that our ways are always right, then we learn something from the other person in that moment also. And then just giving space, not responding right away, and letting there be that moment of pause, so that we can reflect.
And this moment of pause that Elizabeth is saying is what Dhamma is. It's just giving some moment of pause, some space because, the mind we're complex creatures and we can get entangled with different associations with the past, and this can all come and kind of be a pressure point. So we're giving some space so that this pressure doesn't affect us right now, at least until we're emotionally calmed down and clear enough to respond with a little bit more sensibility, and some more knowledge can be available in our response. Our response can be enveloped with knowledge. And that enveloping can happen when we have given it some space. We have distanced ourselves a little bit from this pressure that's being felt in a moment. Yeah. So yeah, we can all agree that it's much harder to respond, in a objective way when one is emotionally impacted in that moment. For that reason, we need to give ourselves some response, right? Otherwise, then you kind of go, oh, I could have done better. The truth is, yes, we can do better by giving ourselves some space. Okay. So spaciousness. Vig?
If I choose, I was just talking to someone last week about this concept of sama, and it's the reconciliation between subjectivity and objectivity, as you kind of described it the other day. I was talking to someone, and he, what he said was, yeah, if I have an objective opinion about something, or if I have a subjective observation for something, I'll just put it in a bucket and move along. I'll determine whether it's important enough for me to attend to it. So that's how he approaches things with regards to subjectivity. Now, is choosing not to fill in the blanks a method of observing sama?
Yeah, so choosing not to is, in a way, giving it some space, because our mind is always processing it in the background anyway. And we all know that it's not possible to put anything totally out of our view, because it will come back sooner or later. It will come back, right, when the circumstances are there. But see, now choosing not to is also a choice. Now you have to know, why are you not choosing to? Because maybe what Leo said, not all things are worthy of giving your time, right? But the thing is, those things that we do give time, why do we give time to them? Because we are impacted by them. So it's not like we can really choose, you see? It's not like you can say, no, I choose not to be impacted by this, and I choose to be impacted. It's not like we make that choice. It either impacts you or it doesn't. So this is more about, what are those things that do impact us that we cannot just sort of put aside and address later, right? Those things, sure, like the washing, I can put that for the washing machine, like the clothes tonight. I don't have to worry about that. But something more important, that's hard to do, right? Now, I personally don't put anything aside ever. I address it and I look at it. And when I'm decently happy that I've looked at it from different angles, then I can say, now let's put it aside, because any further involvement in this is going to yield the same thoughts. And therefore, it's just wasting my day. It's wasting my time. And any continuation is just going to, it's just going to be a repetition of what I thought of it before. So only after having thought about it and decently ascertained different perspectives, then I say deliberately, which is Shama, by the way, deliberately put it aside, and I say, now let God's order deal with it. Yeah, I give it to the God's order, because I have done my part, and there is no more that I can do than what I have done. Now I just choose to put it away and focus on something else in the present. Okay, so this is how, in terms of putting things aside. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you, Andre.
Hi.
I'm coming back to vasanas, because sometimes in the text I can see, not Tattva Bodha perhaps, but other texts, they sometimes mention Samskaras, and I was wondering what the difference between Samskaras and vasanas are. Sure.
They're the same. They're the same. Exactly. They're just different names. We're going to use the word vasana because it is in Tattva Bodha. Tattva Bodha uses the word vasana. And it just means past impressions, past habits, past impressions that are a consequence of what you have done before. So, suppose, a young fella gets, a cigarette. They get offered a cigarette. Now, the first time they put it in their mouth, it is an experiment. They're trying it out. Now it's not quite a vasana yet until they put it 5 times in their mouth, and then they see some girls are sort of finding him cool. At least that's how he interprets it. And then he sort of continues that. So by the time for the 5th time already, it's now already a weak vasana. It's got a weak impression. It can still be kind of distanced from, but because the situation doesn't allow it, in fact, the situation encourages it, then the person only ends up into deepening their impression. So therefore, it's now a strong impression that is embedded in the mind. So samskara is exactly the same. They're just different words.
Because sometimes I also seen that it's described as something that's beyond or in the subconscious that we're not can read, and the vasanas are available to us. But
and I want to talk about that. So that's a good point. Now, both of them, see, in the West, we have the word unconscious mind. Now, you could say that your unconscious, your habits, right? Your unconscious habits, they just make you do things the way that you are, the way you speak, the way you sit, the way you hold your cup. Even if I drink this, right? Why am I not using my right hand? Why am I using my left hand? Why am I not putting the handle this way, but it's actually this way? Right. And the way that we drink, that is a habit. It's how you drank from a cup before. So that is literally a drinking samskara. That's a drinking vasana. Now, do you go deliberately? Okay, let me go like that. Turn it just right. Now, let me put my mouth. Do you go like that? No, it's so automatic. It's just so spontaneous. See, even the way I'm scratching right now with this finger and not this finger is also a vasana. So let's not analyze it so deeply, right? So everything that we do, including me, forward sitting right now and not sitting like this, right? And the way I'm sitting crossed legs, everything is a habit of how you've done it before. And this habit just comes automatically, spontaneously, you could say, from your unconscious mind, from that mind from which these habits are stored. They are stored in this unconscious. Yeah. Later on, we will see it's actually not the unconscious mind. It's called your causal body, but that is yet to come. Yeah. And one more thing about samskara and vasana, there is a subtle difference. It actually doesn't matter in the big picture, but vasana is specific. Like vasana towards my mom is different than vasana of communication towards my dad. Right. So it's a communication is different towards one person over the other. But communication samskara is the way that you overall communicate, like your values of communication towards all people. So towards my mom, there will be patience. Towards my dad, there will be patience. That's called a communication samskara. But if I say a vasana, right, then it's going to be specific, but it's still going to be what? Imbued with patience, right? But it's going to be different towards each person. So vasana is specific habit towards one thing. Samskara is the general across that entire area. The values that you generally have across the entire area, like values towards communication. That's called your communication samskara. Okay. The values of how you drive on the road is called your driving samskara. But how you drive in your own neighborhood, because your neighbors are around, versus how you drive on the highway, or when kind of no one's watching and you got a fast car, then it's a highway vasana versus a neighborhood vasana. But still, the vasana is imbued with what? It's imbued with general looking after other drivers, which is true in your neighborhood. It's also true at the highway. Carrie?
I somewhere read that vasanas are like the reason that you continue to take on another body. Is that kind of another explanation of that term? I mean, I think of vasanas as negatives mostly, rather than just, I guess you can have vasanas for kindness too, but.
Yeah, and you develop that vasana like with anything else. You develop it. Who was kind towards their brother or sister as a young one? When they had the candy, or you had the candy, and they asked, "Can I have some candy?" Yeah, so that vasana was absent at that time. So we learned, to develop a kindness vasana. Now these vasanas, yeah, they pass on. They pass on to our children, to our family. But also now, if I want to bring, lives, continuation of lives, then yes, they also spill over, which is not going to be talked about right now. But there will be a time when I'll speak about sanchita, prarabdha, and agami karma. Then we will bring these vasanas in and how they pass over and so on, and how much of it passes over. But we don't need to go into that too deeply. You know why? Because see, we're not here to analyze psychology. We're not here to be psychologists and to look into human behavior and into the creation of the universe. Even though we will, we will soon see that the whole journey is just recognizing you are free of this whole thing. You are free from. So we only bring this initially just to satisfy that part of the mind which has a genuine need to know about this, and it has a need to deal with the practical matters of life. So there's no question of skipping it. But at the same time, at the absolute highest understanding, we have to also, we will slowly unfold that. You unfold that. So it's all going to nicely fit together. Practicality, right? The practicality of dealing with the world, with the knowledge, that has to be married together. There's no question of separation. That has to be incorporated throughout one's beingness while living. Yeah, so we're not having a divorce between the world and spirituality. We're actually marrying them together to the point where there's no distinction. Okay, so we're about marriage, not divorce. That's what Advaita is. It's reconciling what seemed to be which seemed to be having a different order, right? We're actually reconciling different orders. Okay, so we will see all of this. So Shama, done. Uparama means to do one's duty because they know the importance of it. They know what's important, so much so that one doesn't even have to spend time on Shama and Dhamma. Because if you think about it, if you're really involved in something deeply enough, passionately enough, are you really worried about your problems? Are you really thinking about your problems? No. You're just involved in what has to be done. So by having this uparama, this sense of duty, knowing what is to be done, and being just genuinely, of course, enveloping it with ethics, of course, but just generally getting involved in that and staying in that, right? If you can, then there's Shama and Dhamma is really taken care of. You have to worry about making a mistake because you're just doing, involved in a little world of what has to be done. And so Shama and Dhamma can be there. But they don't have to be there because they're automatically incorporated when you are doing your duty, when you're doing what needs to be done. So therefore, Shama and Dhamma is more so when one's not quite, in fact, let's put it this way. Shama and Dhamma is required or tends to be required more when one is perhaps there's too much time on their hands, right? And they're thinking, oh, what to do, how to do it, where to go, what to do, how to do it, right? So now you have too much time on your head. Like so many problems come. So this means now one has to what? Put some guidance to the mind. Give the mind some guidance, because if it's got too much time, then what's the mind going to do? It's going to bring all of this old stuff, right? Because it's got too much time, all of this old stuff, and it's going to create a big scenario out of it. So now when Uparama comes, what happens? You just get busy, keep one's head down. They're very happily engaged in their work. In fact, Uparama doesn't have to be necessarily enjoyable, because we often get taught in a society, do what you love. So if I don't enjoy what I love, it is not my passion. This is what we often get taught. It is actually not the case. A heart surgeon, do you think a heart surgeon is in like kind of, walking in there happy, cheerful, big smile? A doctor, they're not necessarily, they're just doing what they have to do. There's a certain contentment, a certain satisfaction about what they do, but it doesn't have to be this super cheerful duty that you love. You can hardly wait to get out of your bed. This is all ideas implanted, which are unrealistic in real life. right? I don't actually remember one moment, when I sort of like got up with this, like, yes, I can hardly wait to do, do my business. I was like, hey, it's just a duty, it has to be done. And then you just sort of do it slowly, and you try to find some joy in there, add some variety, add some fun in life. This is everyone's duty. So we don't even have to mention that. So this is everyone's part of making their life a little bit bright, a little bit cheerful, a little bit colorful. Okay. So this Uparama is just focusing on what has to be done. So what does this mean? Do you have, for example, a general way of going through your day, right? Or is it random? Just a general day of going through your day, or is it random? So what is a general way of going through the day? You generally have, okay, so there's a certain time for this, for exercise, for dance, for music, for taking a walk, for sharing some moments with my partner, sharing some time alone, having some meditation time. But just a general way of approaching. It doesn't have to be specific. So this is what we mean by Uparama, doing what has to be done, and then doing whatever is necessary to stick with that, with that schedule, more or less. One doesn't have to be strict. We're not talking about, by the hour, don't miss it, or otherwise the whole thing falls apart. That's not the point, but just a general way that is filled with activities that matter to you, that you find important, and that keep you generally cheerful, give some flavor, some color, some could be intellectual stimulation, could be emotional satisfaction. I don't know what it is. Netflix nowadays, I don't know what you do, right? It doesn't matter. But the point is, it is your specific way of emotional satisfaction and intellectual upholding your sharpness, your sharpness. And this is all part of what? Uparama, doing what has to be done. For what? For your well-being and for the well-being of those around you. So this is Uparama. So next one is forbearance. I just call it endurance. So titiksha ka, shitoshna, sukha dukkadi, sahishnutvam. Endurance for cold and hot. So what does this mean now? 40 degrees or minus 11 degrees, you got endurance. We have to look at the deeper meaning of this. So it means that, see, life is a series of polar opposites. It's either cold or it's hot. It's either kind of rainy or it's something else. It's windy, right? Or what else? It's, and every experience has a certain flavor to it, a flavor attached to it. Every experience is loaded with a flavor. It can be sour, it can be sweet, it can be bitter, it can be pungent. Every experience comes with a flavor. Now, this is the fact of life. We cannot avoid this. There is no experience which is ever going to fit your likes or dislikes 100%. Not one is going to 100% fit our preferences. Do you find this in your life, that an experience matches your preferences 100% of the time? You get the exact reply that you wanted. The person talks to you in the exact way that you want. They say the exact words that you want to hear from them. They give you the exact gift that you want. They don't give you the exact thing that you don't want. Is this how it is? No. So life is a series of these experiences that come with a flavor. What kind of flavor? Hot, cold, okay, up and down. Now, when it says here having endurance, is first acknowledging this is a factual reality. Life is not meant to please you. Did you know that? Life is not meant to please you. This is an idea. This is a personal idea that we have. This is an idea called subjectivity. No, life is meant to please me. And so then what happens? We set up life in a way to please us, but it's not designed to please anyone. It's just designed to harbor life. It's designed to grow crops, to give us sun, to give us moon, to give us day and night, to give us hot and cold, to give us anything that just happens in nature. But it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with you. Life was not here designed to say, hey, I want to make this person happy. So that's the first step in understanding what or how to have this endurance, how to have this endurance. How so? Life will never be there to satisfy you. It's just not going to be there to satisfy you. It's not meant to, because it needs to accommodate everyone's needs. Now imagine you were the creator, and now there's 8 billion people, and every person has a different need, a different idea of life. And now how are you supposed to accommodate all of them? So this means what? You have a soccer team, right? 2 teams, and there's 100,000, there's 50,000 people on one side, and there's 50,000 people on the other side. One side wants their team to win, the other side wants their team to win. Now, who's supposed to get what, right? If one team gets it, the other team doesn't. If one team gets it, the other team doesn't. So now what happens when World Cup, you know how they are, right? After they leave the losing side, whoever parked their car near the entrance is probably going to have their insurance, used up, because their car is going to be crashed, because they need to take out their anger on cars and shops and so on. So this is an idea where life is supposed to please us. A life is supposed to make our team win. So then what happens? Then we lose this endurance, right? We lose it. In other words, we lose touch with reality, right? Reality is one thing, and yet I want reality to be another thing. Why is this so? Because I lost what? This recognition that it is nothing but cold and hot here, like this or like that. And this, like this and like that, has nothing to do with your likes and dislikes. It just has to do with what actually is happening. What is actually happening? That's life. And now what it says here is sahishnutvam. So this is capacity to put up with different situations, which consist of shitoshna, which consist of cold and hot, up and down, right? So capacity to withstand the obstacles of life, whether they are small, bright, red, green, blue, whatever color they are, whatever materials they come with, whatever texture they come with. What happens? Sahishnutvam, withstanding them. How so? By recognizing that that they are of polar opposites. Now, why is this important, or how does this help us? It helps us by removing the insistent need to complain about the small things, because complaining, if we kind of take a time to reflect it, right? Why are things not working out? Why are things like this? Why are they like that? This is all lack of endurance. So in other words, by having this endurance, then we are able to withstand the winds of life, the winds that some of them are very cold, right? Some of them are penetrating winds. Some of them are gentle breezes on the cheek, very smooth and soothing. And you want more of that wind. But unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, that wind never lasts, right? It's only followed by sometimes a C5 hurricane, right? And then you got to kind of run for a moment and take cover. So this is the nature of life. So now, how do we put up with these colds and hots of life? How do we put up with that? We put up with that cheerfully. What does cheerfully mean? Cheerfully means there is a full stop. Suppose you say, it's not a comma. Cheerfully means a full stop, because we say, yeah, I can put up with life, comma, but That's what happens when you have a comma there. But to put up with things cheerfully means you accept the objectivity of what is happening, and you take a moment to see it can't be any other way than it is. This is how it is. No amount of wishing it is going to change it. No amount of complaining or imagining is going to change it. This is how it is. Now may Lord give me the grace and the patience, and may Lord give me enough clarity to move on to the next thing so I don't think about this, or at least to reduce my thoughtfulness onto this thing which has not worked out. So this is what it means to put up with it cheerfully. It's not a big smile on the face. It's a cognitive cheerfully. It's a cognitive cheerfulness. Cognitive cheerfulness means through understanding that this is just how it is. right? You know, one time, I'll tell you a quick story. Maybe I said it before. I was coming from, Byron Bay. I was living in Byron Bay in Australia. And, you know, the taxi man, he takes several people and the bags are obviously there. So he goes into the main street and all he has to do is just turn left and go 5 minutes and, you know, he can drop me off there. So what he did is he went around the entire Byron. It took like 1.5 hours to drop off everyone's bags at their hotels. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I just waited 1.5 hours, right, to wait for these two, because I'm living there and they're all tourists. He could have just taken 5 minutes at the main road and he could have dropped me off. But I had to wait 1.5 hours to wait for these tourists to take their bags out. And he visibly saw that I was highly disturbed by this because I was the last fella who got off. And he said to me what I never forgot. He says, sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. So this is the idea, right? Of course, I didn't have endurance back then, but this is how it is, you know, to put up with it cheerfully. Back then, I didn't have the capacity to sort of close my eyes and meditate. I was just going, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. So that's lack of endurance, right? So in other words, it doesn't help us. So endurance here, the capacity to put up with different situations. How so? With a full stop. This full stop is what we call cheerfully, right? Now, sukha dukkhari. Yeah, so this is the idea. So neither getting too elated when something happens, nor too, dukkhari, too depressed, right? Neither too elated nor too depressed. Now, why not too elated? Because for every elation, there's a come down. Now, when there's a come down, the contrast to the elation is not quite as high as the elation was. So you're like, oh, now my reality is nowhere near as it was when I was elated. So now same with depressed, right? We don't allow ourselves to get too down. And this does require some effort, does require some, involvement, some shama, some cognitive flexibility. So even if you win $1 million or jackpot or whatever, it's not even much nowadays, whatever makes you happy, right? I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, still, so what? I am still me. Nothing's changed, right? I'm still still the same person, still the same thoughts. Nothing's really changed, right? Now, one's not trying to sort of like, put every, happy experience down and deny it. That's not the point. But just taking some thoughtfulness, even in those wonderful moments of life. Saying, I appreciate this. I'm grateful for this. Thank you, God, for giving me this right now. But at the same time, I recognize this is not going to last. This will change. The situations, the circumstances will change. At least that much cognitive flexibility can be applied. That is enough. That is enough to sustain one's equanimity towards sukha and dukkha, towards ups and downs of life. Okay. And also, what about the downs? Now, this is endurance towards the downs. Now, tell me, which down have you not survived? Which down in life have you not survived? We survived every single down. Every down that comes our way, we find a way to survive. We are survivors. That's how we are. That's how we evolved, to survive whatever circumstances come. So this means that even if a down comes, then everyone's got their ways of dealing with that. But either way, there's an attitude, there's a spirit of endurance. A spirit of endurance. This is a factual reality, and I have to deal with this. What is the solution to this right now? So rather than staying in this mode of concern and pity, and I'm so unfortunate and so unlucky, rather switching some moments into solution mode. What now? What could I apply? Where can I go? Who can I talk to? Can I look up some advice on ChatGPT, on Google, whatever, right? You can look up some advice, some ideas, because the idea is when something that is too elated or something that's too low in our experience, our mind can go a little bit out of whack. So that is actually the best moment to search for some new creative ways of looking at that situation. And so you got Google right around the corner. You've got ChatGPT. You can say, list me 10 ways to look at this situation differently. And then you can write that situation out. And then ChatGPT will give you 10 different ways to look at it, right? This is just some ways, right? So notice how we are adapting to the times of technology. We're not denying anything, by the way. We are using everything for our benefit.
Is there a way to work on our endurance? I'm just reflecting over the last few years where we've had lockdowns, and there have been lots of teachers and professionals in the health service experiencing burnout. If you're involved in such an industry, what are the tools that we could use to develop endurance?
It is different for everyone. There's no one solution works for all. My way is to reflect. It's really to look at it from different standpoints. Life also teaches us that there is no choice but to endure it. So the experience itself is an endurance builder, actually, because it teaches you, right, that this is facts, this is the reality. And then you can, prayers work. May the Lord give me some endurance right now, give me some strength and courage to move through the situation intelligently and gracefully, and to do what can be done. May I have, thinking about what can I change? What can I, how can I look at this differently? Because see, lack of endurance, what is lack of endurance? It's more about an interpretation. Right? So if we don't have this endurance, it means our interpretation is not allowing us to endure this. So in other words, what happens, we have no control over because it's happened. It's the fact. It's an empirical fact. What has happened has happened. However, what is in your control? What do you have control over? And it's really always the same answer. It is how you look at it, how you interpret it, what do you make of it, and what do you choose for this to mean for you? Okay? These are questions, again, that you're asking. Like your attitude, it's a mindset. So that's the control that you have, your mindset over what happens. Okay. I would also like to hear someone else, this rather good question. Oh my God, now can you please interpret this in English?
Yes, I will try to. Apratikara purvakam, according to Shankara's Vivek Sudamani definition.
Yeah.
He says sahanam sarva dukkhanam apratikara purvakam, without a sense of revenge. And then chinta without a sense of revenge.
Right.
And then chinta vilaparahitam, without crying over it, without too much of thinking about it. Vilaparahitam, without remorseful weeping over it.
Without pondering over it. But why? Yes, why without a sense of revenge? Is it revenge?
Apratikara purvakam. Apratikara purvakam.
Right. But
why is revenge?
But
I'm quoting Shankara. That's all.
Sure. But I'm just trying to understand why. I'm trying to put this in the right context. Why lack of revenge? I mean,
revenge to a situation which requires titiksha.
I think it means to despise the situation.
Okay. So, yes. Okay. Lorena?
Maybe perhaps it means not taking it personally.
Right.
And that sort of evokes a feeling that you've got to do something as a reaction to that.
Okay, this one makes more sense to me. Okay, Lorena makes more sense to me. So revenge is a byproduct of taking something personally and now having this hard feeling towards something.
Exactly.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah, please.
One man had COVID in our wing in a room, and I know he's going through a hard time, but he had to isolate, and he was very angry at me. because I was there. And he said, why me? Why me? Why do I have to isolate? Why me? He's very angry.
Right.
And I said, I know you feel this way, and it's unfortunate that you have to isolate, but every single person will ask the same thing if you're not isolating, because it will spread. So that's just in reference to the COVID thing.
Took it personal.
Because everybody will say, why me? Everybody.
Right. Okay. Why me? And then take it out on someone. And that, in that sense, it's a revenge, I guess.
Like he felt like we were just he was the one that had to isolate, and he felt he took it personally.
Right.
But
right.
really, it's just because he's in a situation where there's a lot of people, and if he wasn't isolating, everybody would be saying, why me? Why have I got COVID?
Okay, no, that makes sense. Thank you. That's clear.
Unrevengeful attitude. Unrevengeful attitude.
Unrevengeful attitude. Yeah. Okay, now I understand. Now it's more clear. This is good.
Around the health workers during COVID who experienced burnout since then. But during that period when the country or the world was going through such a critical moment, that was their duty. That was their time to actually do what they were supposed to do. So I'm wondering whether, in that sense that they were able to do what they were trained, they were able to practice what they were, educated for during the period where people needed their service the most. Unless you have that kind of a mentality that could get you through the burnout period, maybe, I don't know. But I'm just wondering how your mental state of acceptance of your role in that part, where it was so crucial and critical for us to come out of it. So I understand the burnout, but if we contextualize why that burnout happened and why it had to happen and why it was all on them during that time, whether that would help, but I don't know.
We have real context now what COVID really did. It was 2 years of endurance. And the fact is we did it now. 3 years, right? 3 years.
3 years of wearing a mask for us every day for eight hours.
Yeah, so we didn't have quite. We had some people accept it cheerfully. There was one grandma. She's always at home, and so when she saw everyone else at home, and she's like, "Oh, I accept this cheerfully." Now everyone's in the same place as I am. So this is not quite what endurance is. This is this is some complexities. Kind of feeling good because everyone else is suffering. So this is not what endurance is. Yeah, endurance. Yeah, yes.
So, Andre, just based on the discussions and the feedback from various members in this community, if I asked the question the other way, what contributes to lack of endurance? We could say something, it could be because we're not sufficiently experienced to handle the situation. We might take things too personally. That also contributes to lack of endurance. And, to what Gayatri talked about, maybe we're not holding strongly to our swadharma.
I think also it's resisting, it's overshadowing, it's resisting what's going on with what I want to be going on. We call this shoulds and shouldisms. This should be happening, but what's actually happening is something different. So there's a mismatch. There's a mismatch between what I want and what's actually going on. And there's lack of this flexibility to, now I don't know why there's this lack of flexibility. It's a complex issue, but I think it is this overshadowing one's subjectivity over what's actually going on. So the more resistant, there's a quote, it says, what you resist persists. So what this really means is whatever we resist, that emotion of discomfort, it persists in us because we're refusing to accept what's actually going on. So I think this is why there's this lack of endurance.
Well, something I've noticed is that even people who are like, you think of like a guru and you think, oh, he's very enlightened. And then I've been really surprised sometimes when I see someone like that just fly off the handle and get angry because someone cut them off in traffic or who knows, all kinds of things. And You know, I kind of, it's really hard to see a guru whining about things that just happen every day, you know?
Yeah.
And the other thing that, you look at the symptoms of this, blaming people, it's my family, or it's my spouse, or it's, this is all because of my genetics. I'm the wrong color, I'm the wrong sex, or, and really, when things aren't going right for you, it's a really wonderful time to try to figure out what you can change.
Yeah, this is true. It's now, as Carrie said, there's so many reasons to find what's not working. So many, and this is lack of endurance. Just not finding reasons that are working. Like focusing on what's not working. That is the answer to what Vic is saying. Not finding reasons what is not working, why it's not working, causes a lack of endurance. Versus the other side, you can say what is working. What is actually, what opportunities do I have to make of my life? What can I do, and what is working? That also contributes to some endurance. Okay. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Shanti Shanti Shanti.